1970s, predominantly in Ethiopia, but also in Kenya and Tanzania and Egypt, and a little bit in South Africa, as well as places in the Middle East, and had the great fortune of finding some of these important nuggets in the fossilized record that help us better understand our place in nature. Here you see an illustration of three skulls. On the left, you have the skull of, you have to get used to this tonight, Australopithecus, the tongue twister. It actually means southern ape. It's a bit of a misnomer. It's not the best name. Not what I would have chosen to designate these ape men, but it was the first name applied to a fossil human ancestor. That's people already over there too. We have a pretty good idea of the last 4 to perhaps 6 million years of the human career. We know that there were certain important landmarks along the way that have distinguished us and defined us as unique primates. Primates include apes and monkeys and humans and lemurs and lorises, those sorts of things. But we are unique in a number of features. And as you will see this evening, one of the seminal features, if not the cardinal feature of what allows us to be placed on the human family tree rather than the ape tree, is not language, it's not big brains, but it's standing upright. And we know that the earliest ancestors, Australopithecus on the left, were upright walking, the way that most of us came into the room tonight. And this was a distinction that happened at least 6 million years ago to a creature that was really the ape that stood up. You see the skull on the left, which has a very low forehead, a very projecting large face, a brain about 400 cubic centimeters. An average brain in this room would be about 1,300, 1,400 cubic centimeters. So our brains are more than 4 times or 3 times the size of early Australopithecus. That was an event that happened in Africa. We also see the first appearance of our own genus. We all belong to the genus Homo, which is Latin for man, in its broadest sense, meaning mankind. And in the middle you see something called Homo erectus, or Homo ergaster, as it's known in Africa. And this was a first event in Africa. And thirdly, on the right, you see a skull that's pretty familiar and should look like the skull of the person sitting next to it. It doesn't, let me know. But we all belong to the same species, Homo sapiens, a name given in the 18th century to designate us. All plants and all life is designated by 2 names. We are all designated by at least 2 names. I mean, I'm Don Johansson, there's Bill Smith, or Harold Jones, or someone out there, and you are all known by 2 names. And a Swedish zoologist, botanist actually, by the name of Linnaeus, decided that all living forms needed a scientific name. He called us Homo, after the Latin for man, and sapiens, which means supposedly wise. So we are supposedly wise men, but if you read the paper as frequently as I do, I sometimes wonder if that's the best name for us. So this is more or less the broad outline of the last 4 to 6 million years. And I wanted to start with one of the greatest misconceptions in human evolution, which all of us in this room have seen in one form or another, and that is this depiction of an inexorable walk through time. That you have a span of evolution that ranges from ape to angel. And why is a white European male considered to be the pinnacle of evolution in every one of us? Well, you know why. Because white European males draw these things, so they think that they are the pinnacle of evolution. Nothing could be further from the point, from the truth, because there is no direction to evolution. Sometimes that makes people uncomfortable, because they think that everything that evolution has done was to create us, Homo sapiens. But think about all of the other animals. What if I was a chimpanzee up there, and all of you out there were chimpanzees? You wouldn't believe this either, would you? You'd think that the evolution was designed specifically to evolve in the chimpanzees. So it's really a personal perspective. But certainly the idea of a straight march through time has been contradicted by the evidence that I'm going to show you tonight. It really is a tree, or sometimes even a bush of evolution with many false starts. And you can see how much prejudice there is, and how much misunderstanding there is in this. I mean, see how unhappy that monkey is there? We didn't come from monkeys, but how unhappy that chimp is, getting a little happier, and boy, he's so happy to be Homo sapiens. So there seems to be implied in all of this that we don't really become until we ultimately become Homo sapiens. Well, Charles Darwin, and I'm going to say a few things about Darwin tonight because this is a very important year. This is the 150th anniversary of the publication of Darwin's extraordinary book on the origin of species by means of natural selection. A book that revolutionized our thought about the universe, the biological universe, a book that refocused everyone's ideas onto a natural or naturalistic explanation for how life came to be on this planet, and in many ways flew in the face of a more dogmatic and religious view that was so prevalent in the 1800s in England. It is also the 200th anniversary of his birth that we're celebrating this year. Interestingly, he was born on February 12th. We also have a very famous American born on February 12th. His name was Abraham Lincoln. And they never, I think, knew one another. I don't think they ever corresponded with one another. But should they have come together, they would have had a lot to talk about. Because one of the things that Darwin was so fervent about, and in fact, as were his in-laws, he married his first cousin, which we know we shouldn't do. And he did have kind of crazy kids. But he was an anti-slavery, very outspoken anti-slavery person, just like Lincoln was. So in England, he fought fervently against the idea of slavery. And this is something that he and Lincoln would have shared notes on very well. Darwin proposed in his Origin, short of the title, that all life forms had gone through evolutionary change over time. That not all creatures were created as we see them today, but that they had ancestors that looked different. That there were many lines or branches on the human family tree that went extinct. That there were no guarantees in evolution. In fact, that extinction was much more typical of the tree of life than was survival. One of the things about Darwin that is interesting is that so many people say that he was anti-religious. He was not anti-religious. None of us are anti-religious as biologists. Religion is a personal belief that people carry as to how things were created. But they thought this because everyone said, well, he attacked the idea of the church and said that humans evolved. Well, he didn't say anything about human evolution in his book until the 6th edition of his book. And he waited till the 3rd to the last paragraph of this tome. And in a very understated, typical Darwin way, he wrote, light will be thrown on the origin of man and his history. So he was very reticent to say too much. He didn't want to be a provocateur. He didn't want to put himself in the limelight of controversy. And yet the ideas that he articulated in the origin inexorably, of course, would fall on an explanation for the origins of humankind. Now bear in mind, in 1859, when he published that, and in 1863, when Thomas Henry Huxley, that first book I read as a kid, that got me interested in the evolution of humans. All they had was a Neanderthal stone that had been found in 1856 in Germany. Nothing had been found in Africa. Most people at that time accepted the view, and again, this is because they were all European scientists, that they accepted a